Hi, this is Scott Love. I'm the author of Why They Follow, How to Lead with Positive Influence. On today's episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, I'm going to show you how you can be the type of leader that nobody wants to leave.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us here on this episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Interview Series, where today we'll be looking at how to effectively lead so they will loyally follow. If you're a new listener, a new viewer to the show, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, then a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. GNA also cited us in the top 10 podcasts for HR pros and employers. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we always need your help to stay relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Watching and listening to this show, you're a high-level executive, an entrepreneur, a leader in some form. And as a leader, you know the issue of loyalty and retaining top talent is no longer a problem, but as I stated in my last book, Fiercely Loyal, it's a crisis. One of the major points that I've hoped that I've driven home in that book and in this show constantly is that that's as much a leadership responsibility as it is a talent issue. So our guest today is Scott Love. Scott talks to this challenge head-on in his new book, Why They Follow, and how to lead with positive influence. Scott shows managers how to be the kind of leader that nobody wants to lead. With over 20 years of empirical research, he gives managers tactical ideas to lead in a way that increases employee retention, reduces turnover, and attracts high achievers. He is a successful entrepreneur, professional keynote speaker, and as I said, the author of Why They Follow. Scott Love is also a graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and I probably did that completely wrong, but nonetheless, put your hands together and please welcome Scott Love! Woo!
Thank you, Dov.
And the love is pouring out to you, my friend.
Applause. That's awesome.
How are you, mate?
I'm awesome, man. I'm excited to be here.
It's good to have you here. It's good. And I know this is going to be a great convo because this is going to be, it might be a bit of preaching to the choir, but we'll hope that we can convert some listeners into the importance of really what to do to create loyalty. And I want to kick it off here by going for the jugular first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And that is, how many large organizations have you run?
None.
Okay. How many publicly held companies have you run?
None.
How
am I doing so far?
You're doing fabulous. Because me neither. So why are you qualified on this subject?
Because I've been a headhunter for over 22 years. And what that means is that I call up managers and try to recruit them. I own a company called the Attorney Search Group. I recruit partners for international law firms in Washington and New York. And I've worked in other industries. And what's interesting is that when I call up someone and I try to find out, are they open to hearing about other things? If they are, I always find out, why are they open? Mm-hmm. And there's always an emotional context to that. And that usually has something to do with the boss above them, the team, the people. It's never about the skills. It's hardly about the commute. There's always an emotional context. And here's the other side of the coin, Dov. When people say, no, I'm never going to leave. Mm-hmm. I don't care how much it pays, the opportunity you have. I don't care how good it is. I'm never going to leave. I love it here.
Right.
And I always ask them, I'm always, because I'm just curious about this. Why
Right.
is it? Why would you intentionally turn down the idea of exploring an opportunity that could be better?
Right.
And it's usually because of the relationship with the boss, one level up. That's it. It's not about the CEO. It's
No.
not about that. It's about that immediate boss.
Yeah.
And so this is the trend that I've seen of for 22 years and having literally tens of thousands of these conversations. And I love the work of being a headhunter. I love it. I absolutely love it. But just having it's almost like, you remember that show, Name That Tune? Had you ever seen that one before?
Yep.
Years ago. Millennials, you got to go to YouTube and Google it or whatever, but people would say, I can name that tune in 3 notes. Why is it? Because they've heard that song so many times
Right.
that they can predict what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
When I start talking to someone, I can, why don't you want to look at other opportunities? I kind of already know what that answer is.
Right.
And so what I've decided to do, because I've done a lot of speaking, I used to own a recruiter training company that I just sold last year because I wanted to get back into the work of recruiting because I really am passionate about that. And I love it. And I've taken all that knowledge. And so that's one of the other things that I do is speak to organizations and speak at their conferences, whether it's an association or corporate retreat or a managers meeting, and show them, here it is. This is everything that I've learned in 22 years. I'm going to distill it into a few short action steps that if you do these, you're going to have somebody who will turn down better opportunities when they're presented to them, and somebody that will, and it's because of, I believe, it's what I call the emotional equity.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
feel like they have a stake.
Yeah.
And then this is the thing. When you are really excited about something that you're doing, you're going to tell your friends about that.
Yeah.
So that's going to start to attract other high achievers. When you have that type of an organization, that's when it gets pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
And just by having worked with so many organizations like that, having had so many conversations, it's a unique perspective where I'm actually doing that work. I'm talking to people every day to this day.
Absolutely.
And it's really exciting. When I work with an organization that gets it, that has that emotional equity,
Yeah.
it's electric to be a part of that as a consultant.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. This piece around emotional equity, I think that so often, particularly those leaders who are a little older, mid-40s and on, tend to think about skills and even bottom line, but they forget that people perform better for people they enjoy, the people they like being around. And I am old enough to remember that you went into work and you were told not to make friends with people, just to get your head down and do your work. But the research clearly shows that people who have friends at work, and millennials, by the way, that's high on their priority list, that this is a friendly environment where I can make friends, because they understand the work-life balance means that they're balanced at work. And it's not about being away from, but the importance of having that relationship actually makes them more productive, not less. But in old school thinking, it was like, well, if you're friends with all the people you work with, you never get any work done. And that's that emotional equity. And this is what I think is important, what you said, is that that's also, and it's been such a taboo subject, but it's also on that level up, as you're saying. I've got to really like the leader. The leader's got to really like me. I've got to like, as the leader, I got to like my employees and have that interaction. And what you're saying there from the research is that's what you discovered, right? You found out that there was that deep caring.
Mm-hmm.
How did they describe that to you? I want our listeners, our viewers to get a grasp of that, because I think that they think being friendly is either a taboo or it's some surface nonsense. And I don't think you're talking about that.
No, it was very familiar. They would use words like, I love it here.
Yes.
They would never say, I like it. I like it here. It's okay. And what's interesting, some people will move to a rut that's just 20 minutes closer to their house. Really, they will. But when somebody is emotionally committed, then you've got their heart and their soul.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, one of the things you said, again, I talked about it in the book, and I think I know you're saying the same thing, and it's really important to people, is, again, old school leaders tend to think if I throw more money at the person, they will stay. But what you need to understand about millennials is, remember, millennials are now 37 years old. So at the upper end, is a millennial will actually leave you for a lower paying job. And that seems like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you found about that. So
I'd say
here's the person who's being offered less money and they're going to leave.
Somebody will. It depends on really where they are in terms of their level of thinking. And the structure I usually talk about is pretty simple. I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
At the very bottom, we've got our basic survival needs: food, clothing, water, shelter. Above that, we've got a need to feel safe. And then the top three, that's when you start making an impact. It's the sense of belonging to something,
Yep.
being part of the team, having that connection. Above that, it's to be recognized, ego.
Yep.
People love to have that recognition, and it doesn't cost much to recognize people. But the level above that, as you know, it's the self-actualization.
Yes.
Being fulfilled in what they do. Where what they do, it's not just work; it's a calling in many ways.
So let's just move this into the very practical, pragmatic sense. So we've got a leader watching, listening to the show. You know, they go, okay, I kind of get this, but I don't really know how to do it. What's the first step, Scott? Where do they start without seeming like a complete creep and a weirdo?
Right. I'd say number one, it starts with observation. Knowing what motivates each one of your immediate reports, because everybody's motivated by something that's different. My 16-year-old son, he's never been motivated by anything academic. A year ago, he got into modeling, and now he's an international model. Right. He and his mom just got back from London, Milan, and Paris. Now they're in New York for New York Fashion Week. He's motivated. He'll wake up at 4 a.m. because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
So look at your team and find out what's motivated. Everybody. This person's motivated by recognition. This person's motivated by seeing the results of what they actually do. This person's motivated by just being early and making sure all the papers are organized and being a good supporter. So I'd say it starts with observing your team and understanding that everybody's different and really, in a way, customizing how you lead for each person.
I think that's a great point, Scott, because I think one of the things that I've said all along is if you have a universal recognition system, you have a failure to recognize anybody but a very small percentage of people. And your very best people probably don't want to be recognized in that way. And you're going to lose them. And you go, well, we did this and we sent you. You know, in my book, I talk about a software company in Washington who gave everybody Seattle Seahawks tickets because they were so happy with everybody and did such a great job. And then there's these two employees, you know, high-level employees sitting in a bar together, and one of them's like, "Oh, it's so great! The company's so awesome!" You know, and is watching the game over the other person's shoulder, like it's so fantastic. You know, they really care about us, don't you think? And he's looking at the other guy, and the other guy's like, "Yeah, whatever," because he doesn't like football, doesn't care.
Yeah.
So that became an insult because it actually qualified. You don't know who I am. You don't care about me. And this is why I think your point is so crucial at a very simple level. Like that's something you could do today. Observe rather than assume.
Mm-hmm. And then even think back of what caused those people to perform at a high level. What were the action steps that you took? Was it they were in a crisis situation or they were able to get a lot of recognition? Think through. And like I mentioned, everybody's different. And then you get a sense for, okay, how can I articulate this message on this new directive that we have based on what I know is going to motivate them.
But that's something very important you just said there, which is, and I think, again, we miss this, is the willingness to look back in order to look forward. Mm-hmm. We do this politically, we do it historically, we do it as nations. We don't look back, we don't learn from history. Although we all know we should. And so it's really interesting for me that you're saying, even at an individual level, look back at your people and say, okay, when did Charlie, when did Susan, when did whoever it was really like blow it out of the water? And it seemed to be an anomaly. Because I've actually worked with leaders like that. I'm sure you have. Where it's like, yeah, I'm thinking about canning this person. Why? Well, they're not playing up the game. And I go, well, did they ever? Yeah, but I guess they lost it. Well, did they? What you're saying about looking back and what was the actual circumstances that facilitated that? Mm-hmm. And if you can, it's often not difficult to remodel that, bring it back up.
Absolutely right.
Very interesting. So one of the things you and I have in common, and we talked about it off air too, is our great belief in that leadership is the heroic journey. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about that and in a way that our viewers, our listeners can really sort of grasp how this might pertain to them.
Absolutely right. And here's a recommendation. Let's say you have a position that you're trying to fill within your company. This is what I usually do. When I come across a prospective candidate, here's a professional that's open-minded to making a move. Before I even present the opportunity, I find out two things. What's keeping them from being completely satisfied? And I try to get real specific. And I'll even ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 meaning you're completely fulfilled. Where are you? I'm about a 4. What's keeping you from being a 10? Well, it's the leadership. What do you mean by that example? Exactly. How so? Give me an example. And I try to go deep and really find out what is that intrinsic motivation that the person has. Then the second question I ask him is this: what does your ideal situation look like? What's the criteria of another opportunity you would get excited about? And I use that word. It's an emotional word, dog.
Exactly.
And I'm talking to the smartest people in the world, partner level attorneys,
Yeah.
because they make a move based on emotion. And so this is what I do. Because I know so much about my clients, I try to come up with 20 reasons why someone would join this particular organization. What they told me is reason number 3, number 10, and number 13. Well, those are the 3 things I'm going to talk about. This is what's important to me. And this is the way I do it. It's like that arc. Here is the problem, and here is the solution. This is the problem my client has. They have 100 attorneys in their New York office, and none of them do white-collar investigations work. There's a clear void. They're missing out on business. Someone like you can solve that problem, and this is how it would help you. So I try to show them how you can be the one that kind of goes through that hero's journey. And this is a microcosm. This is like a 5, 10-minute, 15-minute conversation. But I try to show them it's all about increasing in significance. When you talk to professionals, I say this is an opportunity that I think can help you increase in your significance. And I think that's what the hero's journey is all about. Cycle where we go through the pit, and here is a wise old sage that gives us a magical device, a lightsaber, right? A lightsaber, here's a magical device. And then we develop a band of comrades, and we go through the swamp, and we rise out and grow in our character, and we reach that goal. And I think that's what everybody truly wants. I think that is that the pining that our hearts have to go through that. I think that's part of our inherent nature of who we are. We have that need for adventure. And being with an organization that realizes that not just has that, but also has ritual built into their culture. That's something that it feels so good to go through. And I think that's what's missing. I think especially ritual. It's missing in a lot of organizations.
So let's talk to that, Scott, for a minute.
Sure.
I think that's an important thing that I think very few leadership consultants, very few leadership leaders even understand. Talk to us about that piece, ritual.
Something I learned in the Boy Scouts, from Cub Scout all the way up through Eagle. Something I learned at the Naval Academy. Something I learned on active duty as a naval officer. Is that the ritual is what bonds us to the story. I'm a watercolor artist. I've been painting for a couple of years, and some of the things I've been doing is painting some of the military emblems, like the Marine Corps emblem, giving it to my friends when they retire as colonels in the Marine Corps. And what I realize is it's the artists that keep that story alive. It's the myth of the Marine Corps, the myth of the Navy, the myth of the Army, the Air Force. Those stories that we have, those are the things that bond us together. And I think organizations that can really, I don't want to say capitalize on that, but they can really see that this is something that's going to pull our people together. And they can find out what is the rituals. What are the rituals that we can incorporate in our story? For example, I spoke at a sales meeting in January. About 150 people, 200 people were attending there. The morning session, before I got on, I sat through the morning session. It was about 90 minutes of a ritual of recognition where they'd bring people up by region. And that was part of their story. And I think people have that expectation. Every year they have that expectation of earning that award, being recognized in front of their colleagues. So I think those are some of the things that organizations can do to really start integrating.
So let's imagine that I am a leader inside of a company. And I go, you know what? We have some rituals, and you know this as well as I do, Scott. Some of those rituals are pretty lame, right? They don't really work anymore. What would be your guidance to somebody watching, listening, and going, you're right. We need a ritual that bonds us. What would be something you might suggest to make a start? What would be something that they could just step into right off?
One thing I would do, kind of again going to observation, look at what motivates the people in your team and start to collect stories.
Right.
Whenever I have a new client, here's a new law firm, they want to engage me on a search, I want to talk to people that have recently joined that firm to get stories. If I tell a candidate, this is why it's a great place to work, well, I have an agenda. I get a fee when I make a placement. So I try to use stories from other people that are believable. Social proof, Cialdini's concepts of social proof.
Absolutely.
So I would collect different stories within your organization. Ask yourself this question. Within our organization, look through those people that have joined it within the last 2 years and ask yourself this question. How has our organization improved the lives of those people that have joined it within the last 2 years? And start to get those stories. And that does a couple of things. And I'm a big believer of Robert Cialdini. I actually got to meet him and his wife about years ago when I lived in Phoenix, and they became friends of mine. And I know you mentioned him in your book.
Yeah.
But there's a concept called commitment and consistency. Mm-hmm. That when I start behaving in a certain way, if I buy a car, I'm going to tell all my friends to buy that car. If I go to a church, I'm going to tell all my friends to go to that church. That means I'm less likely to quit that church. You know, you go join Rotary Club, you recruit your friends. I don't want to quit my Rotary Club because 2 of my close friends go there now.
Right.
You know, so I think building story into your organization and using that as a recruiting tool, as to identify what are the rituals that we need to incorporate, and just start paying attention to that nuance and to that subtlety of the expression of the value of your company and the lives of its people.
You know, you said something that I think is a really great tip for everybody. We tend to think about recognizing Bob because Bob was the top salesman this month. You know, and that's kind of been done for 40 years.
Yeah.
But it's a lame process because it forgets the humanity. And you know, and what you just said there, which I think is, you know, it's cool. Yeah, we want to acknowledge Bob, top salesperson. But let's just stop for a minute, Bob, and let's not talk about your numbers, but rather tell me how working here has impacted your life. How has it changed your family? Like what you've just given there, Scott, I think is a very powerful piece because it's the humanity, and we're, as leaders, we like to think that we're very logical and we're very rational and all that crap, and we forget that human beings are emotionally driven first. And so going to that emotional piece. Now, when you speak at conferences, you talk about the first cardinal rule of human behavior. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think it's going to help people to grasp what we're talking about here.
Absolutely right. That's that people are going to do what's in their own best interests. In sales, it doesn't matter why I think it's a great opportunity. It matters what my prospect thinks is a motivation for him or her. I'm going to articulate that narrative based on what motivates them rather than what I think is good. Absolutely. If I have a directive, I need to tell someone, you need to do this. I need to articulate it based on that. Here's an example from a long time ago, Dov. Active duty, the Iraqis had just invaded Kuwait. I'm on a minesweeper. I'm third in command of a minesweeper. I'm in charge of the sonar. The sonar's down. It has to get up. Petty Officer Schaefer, he'd spent the last 6 weekends at work. The sonar's still down. I've got to tell him to leave his family for 1 more weekend and get it up. So this is what I did. I said, Petty Officer Schaefer, have a seat. Let's talk about this in my stateroom. As you know, the Iraqis have invaded Kuwait. Right now, our ship has to get underway Monday for sea trials. If we don't, we're the most important ship in the United States fleet. Right now, you're the most important sailor in the United States Navy because the sonar is down. I need you to spend 1 more weekend and get that sonar working before Monday. No hesitation at all, because I was able to talk to what matters to him. It's that significance, self-actualization. I think when we can look at whatever our company does, whatever the business that we're in really does in terms of our vision, in terms of our purpose and our mission, and it's not about us. It's not about the bottom line. It's not about paying for the CEO's yacht.
No.
It's about the personal and the emotional impact that our product or our service makes in the lives of other people. And really talking about that. I think that's what's going to really ignite that fire in the employees of an organization.
You know, again, I think that we forget. Again, my background being in psychology, it's, you know, I have this always fires off in my brain, but we forget that people are you don't get to come to the planet and not get an ego.
That's right.
Right? So you may be fairly enlightened, you know, but even the Dalai Lama has an ego that he needs to work with, and I think that understanding that as a leader and helping people and leading people in a way that will make them loyal it's not about manipulation in the negative context, but it is about influence and understanding that, as you very well stated, Scott, every human being has a need, a desire for recognition. And one of the analogies I give and I speak about in some of my trainings is, tell me something, anything that you've done that was altruistic. And people will come up with, I wrote a check for $100,000 or I wrote a check for $10, and nobody knew, and I didn't tell anybody, or I did this, I helped this person and did that, and I go, that's great. And they say, nobody knew. No, you didn't tell anybody. No. Didn't tell your wife? No. Didn't tell your kids? No. Fantastic. How did you feel? I felt fantastic. Wasn't altruistic. You got something out of it.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing.
That's right.
It's not a bad thing. It's simply owning that you're not a robot, and that as much as the high level thinking of being altruistic might be very rational and logical, the fact is you have an emotional being that is partly a part of is related to your ego that wants significance. And as a leader, you have got to be able to see that in your people, but not give it to them. We're back in a loop here, but not give it to them in the way you think they want it. But as you very clearly stated, by being a great observer and giving it to them in the way that they want it, vastly different.
Absolutely right, Dov.
What do you think is the most practical thing a C-suite leader watching, listening, or even for that matter, an entrepreneur watching and listening this show could really get? What's the most practical thing they can get from what it is you're sharing?
I think to really think through, why do people come to work every day? What is it that's truly important to them? And know that when they come to work, they're coming to work for themselves, not for you. We know you started your company and you've grown it to 500 people. Good for you. That employee is getting calls from other headhunters. And they might leave because this is the time everybody's looking to grow.
Yeah.
The economy's back. And there has to be a reason why they're going to say, I'm never going to leave. I love it here. What is that reason? Maybe do some surveys, some confidential surveys. Hire a consultant to come in and do a survey on your team to really find out what that is. I think it's there's one concept, Dov, that I call the response ratio. That when you give a directive to an employee, they're going to choose on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the amount of energy and commitment to achieving that directive? 1 being the minimum. Hey, if minimum wasn't good enough, Dov, it wouldn't be minimum.
No.
Right? A 10 is, I'm going to give my heart and my soul to accomplishing this. And that's what you want to do. You want people to choose to give that higher response. And it's based on your personal leadership. I think that's the secret that unlocks it. The personal leadership that you have as an individual. And I know you believe this in reading your book. No such thing as, it's just business. No, it's personal every day, all the time.
Yeah.
And they're making a judgment. Everything you do and everything that they say, the rolling of the eyes towards another colleague, the way you're talking about other people that they overhear, they're realizing you could be doing that to me.
Yeah. People are not as deaf as you'd like to think.
That's right. Why should I give above a 1 if I know that's how you really are?
Yeah.
It's all about leadership.
Yeah, it's all very much about that personal leadership. You you had your headhunting company, you're a speaker, you've done all those things, but I know you're also committed to your own growth and your own development. And one of the things I say to our listeners and our viewers is, listen, if you're not growing and developing, you're already dead in the water. And part of that growth and development comes from facing challenges, and the most successful people are doing that all the time. What is a problem or a challenge that you are currently working on and doing in your business that you are sort of butting your head up against?
I'll give you 2 answers. One of them relates to the personal development, and it's staying committed every day to doing 1 hour a day of personal development, whether it's on the treadmill, reading a book, listening to an audio, listening to your podcast. If I'm on the treadmill for 30 minutes and I listen to 30 minutes of your podcast, I'm doing an hour worth of development in 30 minutes worth of time. I double down, baby, right? So that's one challenge is to keep my personal performance at a high level. And the other one is working as an advisor to law firms, because most law firms are not effective business organizations. They promote people that are really good attorneys, but they don't have the leadership skills nor the leadership development. And it's very rare for me to see a law firm that says we've hired leadership consultants to come in. So that's nothing I really charge for, but it's something that giving advisory work to the firm. These are some things I think you should do to attract high-performing, big books of business partners to your organization. And knowing that when a partner moves, it can be the kiss of death of his career if it's the wrong group, or it can be something that just makes his world absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So it's just really getting the trust of chairmen of international law firms, senior management leaders, the executive committee, building that sort of trust and rapport with them so I can give them advisory work that's going to help lift their organization. So that's my big challenge is getting in there. And it's something I'm good at and something I really love to do. It's just
Very
absolutely,
cool.
Yeah.
In order to you've reached a high level of success yourself in all kinds of ways. What would you say is one belief you had to overcome? Because we all, I don't care who you are, everybody gets some shitty beliefs that we've got to undo and deal with. What was a belief that you had to face, deal with, and overcome in order to reach the level of success that you've reached?
There was a book I saw in a business section of a bookstore. The book was about how to overcome self-sabotage, and the title of it was called How to Overcome Self-Sabotage. And that was my issue, Dov.
Yeah.
Because I grew up white trash, and the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poor. We're poor, but we're proud, son. We're always going to be poor, but we're always going to be proud. I'm like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know. And
so that was the mythological belief that you were embedded with, that if you're poor, you get to be proud.
That's right.
That's
and
powerful.
Those rich people. The rich people. And this is the thing I've learned by meeting people that are successful, is that wealth is a representation of value. That's all it is.
Say that again, because they need to hear this.
Wealth is a representation of value. The more lives that you touch, the more money you make, the more you can give. It's just a tool. Money is just a tool.
Right.
It's not good. It's not bad. It's just a tool. So I think for me, it was growing in my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my self-esteem. Self-confidence is getting good at the skills. Self-esteem is knowing that your worth is not based on your net worth financially. I used to do a lot of coaching for people in the recruiting industry. And when people would cycle downward during the recession, I saw that their self-esteem would go with it.
Yeah.
And so I think with myself, it was just knowing and seeing and hiring coaches to help me. Dr. Ken Christian is a coach on performance that really helped me to see that mistakes, there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. It's just learning. So for me, it was just my own personal performance stuff. Getting my head squared away on straight, and knowing that my significance is not dependent upon how much money I have in the bank, and knowing that I deserve to win.
So on that very subject, one of your chapters in the book, you talk about leadership development on a budget.
Yeah. So
what are some, because I'm so in favor of this, what are some of the most economical ways that an organization can develop leadership skills for its managers?
I believe it's just doing something, getting books, $20 a book, and giving it to the 10 people in your department, and every Thursday at lunchtime, have a book discussion, 45 minutes long.
Yep.
You can break it into 3 chapters a week, and what you can even do is have the new managers, the new employees, have them lead the lessons. Because when you teach something, that's when you truly learn that, and it gives you a chance to observe people in action. Who are the next generation of leaders that I should be looking for? So that's one thing you can do. I think also it helps to have a journal and to document your achievements. To when you're going through a crisis, you have to make a decision. Just journal. Sometimes I've journaled until 2 a.m, but finally I got my resolution. I've come up with my pros and my cons, and this is what I should do. It doesn't cost you anything to do that.
No, and I think people are often afraid of journaling for some of the good reasons. They're afraid someone's going to see it, whatever it is. But I often say, I personally believe, get yourself a coach, get yourself a therapist, get yourself whoever you need, but get yourself a journal, because I'll tell you, I've got shelves of them. But just there's things in my head that will wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I can lie there and have a restless night, and sometimes that might happen. But if I get up and I write in the journal, and sometimes it is for 10 minutes, and sometimes it is for multiple hours, that whatever is in there will suddenly ease off, and you can
Yeah.
have that clarity. And I think it's a really good point. I think it's a basic tip for leaders and leadership is in just get it out. Don't let it recycle inside of your coconut. Get it out.
Yep. You're exactly right. A friend of mine who was actually a client, he hired me to come in and speak to his, they had a sales managers meeting, about 100 new sales managers. I spoke at their conference earlier this year. He got his PhD in organizational development. And I asked him, I said, what was your dissertation on? And he said it was on developing coaching within organizations. And I said, what was the most surprising thing that you found in doing your research? And he said, as long as a company did something, it didn't matter what they did. As long as they did something, there was a benefit to it.
Yeah.
Same thing with leadership development. As long as you do something, you're going to see a result.
But the challenge is, you know this is probably even better than I do, Scott. The challenge is when we say the words leadership development, it becomes tactical and skills based, and and the level of emotional intelligence that is lacking in business today is astounding.
Yeah.
It is astounding. How do you have them really grasp this need for emotional intelligence to build the emotional equity?
Some of them, I just don't have that kind of relationship with some of my clients. Some of them I do. One of my best clients, he retired from law. He was a managing partner of the DC office of Chadbourne and Park. He and I had lunch about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I told him, I said, you are one of the most effective leaders I've ever met in law firms. And he was surprised. He said, why is that? And I said, it's because you're self-aware. You know that how you act, it affects other people.
Yeah, right.
And if a manager just stops, if they look at the data, we've got a lot of retention. What's going on? Why is that happening? Or we have a lot of turnover. What is that? What's causing that? Look at the data first, and then work your way backwards, and then find out why do people stay? Why do they leave?
I just did a video on this, and it was called "Psychics and Sycophants: Who is Killing Leadership." And it's really important in the context of what you're just saying. In that, I often will meet a leader who actually thinks they know what other people are thinking, so they're behaving like a psychic. Well, I just know you were thinking that. Really? And the problem with it is...
The voices tell me that.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you don't need the pills. I mean, it's just... Right? But they actually believe that they know what the other people are thinking. And the problem with it is that the sycophantic staff that they have, who are naturally, as you said, going to take care of their own interests, are not going to correct you because you signed the paycheck. So if you think you're going to get honest feedback, that's very unlikely unless you set something up that allows that to happen. And moreover, here's the thing. Do you have someone in place who absolutely, without reservation, can tell you the truth without fearing the consequences to you? Very, very few leaders do that. On top of, as you said, becoming self-aware, doing the work to do that. And if you don't remove the sycophants, you'll never get the truth, because they're just going to go, yes, boss,
Yeah,
no matter what you say.
That's right.
And you'll keep playing the psychic, and no one is going to correct you. We had an interaction recently. My business partner is also my wife and my very best friend. And we had an interaction with somebody recently, and the day after, my wife sits me down. She goes, I want to talk to you about something. Okay. She tells me a behavior I did that I was like, I'm disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
Because I know it's better. But I'm certainly not going to be pissed with her or upset with her. I'm upset with myself, of course. It's not how I want to be. But thank God, I'm so grateful that I have somebody who brings that to me. Now, was that awareness with me? Absolutely. I was aware of it very quickly. I'm a reasonably self-aware person. But my own ego wants to go, it's no big deal. But it eats away at me. Having somebody who brings that up to me, you need somebody in your organization who can allow you to step into that and get away from trying to play psychic. That you're not a psychic leader. If you want to be a psychic leader, that's fine. Start your own psychic line, 1-800, call me now. This is JoJo's psychic line. That's not a CEO. It's a different position. And that, you can pay by the minute for that, but that's a different position.
You're hilarious, Dov. You crack me up, man. I actually had a friend of mine who, and this is really bizarre, kind of tangentially, but by understanding different expressions in people, you get a general sense of reading people.
Of course.
Years ago, I was living in Phoenix. At the time, there was this eco-terrorist that was burning down houses, torching houses in the desert. And I was over at his house for a function that our parish had, and we're talking
You were
about
at the eco-terrorist house?
No. We were a friend of mine was hosting something for our parish.
Okay, sorry.
He lived in the neighborhood.
I was like,
He lived
you're
in the
hanging out with some
neighborhood.
interesting dudes.
Well, listen to this. He lived in the neighborhood where this eco-terrorist was torching houses.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, do you think they'll ever catch him? And he looked at me and he said, they'll never find out who he was. He's so brilliant. He's probably covered up his tracks. They won't know who he is. And he gave me a look. And I realized my friend Mark, he's the terrorist. He's the guy, he's the arsonist. He's torching houses. And I told my wife, she said, no way. He's on the vestry. He's president of the Homeowners Association. He's a marketing executive in healthcare. I'm like, he is torching houses. I just know it.
Right.
Sure enough, 3 weeks later, they caught him on television, and he confessed he's in prison right now for torching houses. I read that.
Wow.
And it was spooky, Dov. You talk about psychics and all that. I don't know, but I think these micro expressions that people have, you can read people. I wouldn't use that as your sole source of finding out what's going on inside someone's mind. But that's pretty bizarre.
But that's a very good point because, so here's the thing. Working in the industry you're in, and this is even as saying this, I'm cautious because I know that people want to jump on that bandwagon. But working in the way that you did as a headhunter, you have to do that. My background in psychology, I was trained in micro cues. I when I'm working with somebody as a consultant, and back even in the days when I was a therapist, I never took notes. And somebody would walk in my office 5, 6, 8 years later, and I'd say something to them, and they go, "How do you remember that?" And I said, "You didn't take any notes." I said, "Because of the dilation of your pupils and your pulse went up." Now, there are people like you who may not have been trained by that, but the years of, because you bring the word up, the years of observing make you pay attention to those micro cues.
Yeah.
The problem is that because you got a title of CEO, did not give you that training.
Yeah.
Don't think it did. If you want to get the training, sure, go get it. Fantastic. But one of the clear things you can do is stop playing psychic. And one of the ways you can do it is to simply say this. What happened right there? And they go, what do you mean? It seemed like something shifted. Like create something that's open and an open question rather than an accusation. Well, you seem a bit afraid to me right now. Really? No. That's not going to get a great response. But did something happen right there? No, why? It just seemed like there was some kind of shift. Oh, well, I feel... That's a whole different approach. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Congratulations on catching the eco-terrorist.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny, though. I think looking at patterns that people have, I talked about the first cardinal rule of human behavior is that people are going to do what's in their own best interest. The second one is that they're predictable and consistent.
Yes.
And you can start look at their patterns. And if you see a pattern that takes place, you need to address that. You need to talk about that.
Yeah.
One way I think is a good way to resolve that, and this is in your book, I think it was brilliant where you talk about the conflict. People that have a fear of resolving conflict, they're just waiting for some sort of bad thing to happen in that relationship. And something that I've learned from my coach, Dr. Ken Christian, he told me that when you have someone you need to address with a performance issue, say it like this, say, you have so much potential. I have so much hope for you to achieve these goals, and I want to get your permission to advise you to get you to that point. Now you've got buy-in.
Exactly.
And it's different. In the military, you can just tell people what to do because you've got the authority over here, and you're not going to and they can't turn their notice in because that's desertion, so you got to
jail for quitting the job.
Go to the brig for turning their, in corporate America or corporate Canada, you can turn your notice in and go somewhere else.
Sure.
So you've got to have that more participative sort of style, that more affiliation where you build that emotional equity from their heart.
Scott, one of the things that I believe about successful people in any area, so whether they are rock stars, actors, CEOs, entrepreneurs, consultants like yourself, myself, speakers, whatever it might be, is that I find that those people are obsessed. There's something they're obsessed with. It's not the same thing. It's something unique and personal. And what I've often said about that is that if there's a movie and something about your obsession shows up, that's the part of the movie you'll remember and you'll talk about.
Yeah.
If there's a book and you see it in the title somewhere, you'll talk about it. If there's a conversation going on in the room over there, but you're over here talking to these people, and you're quite engaged, but you hear that little hint, you'll leave this conversation to go and have that. What's yours? What's your obsession, Scott? What is it that you cannot avoid getting into?
My daily metrics. In my obsession, it's in my own business. In the business in which I work, it's a sales type business. It's a performance business. And that's why I had to decide at one point, do I want to go into keep my recruiter training business or the recruiting business? And the recruiting business, I think it's a better business for me. Mm-hmm. It's like for myself, I could do this and I would do probably not as well in this niche economically, maybe just as well. But I found that I become a better person by being in this type of business. At least for me, that was a choice I made.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about the metrics. Every day, what I do each day at the end of the day, I look at how much phone time I had. In my phone system, I have a call accounting program, and I can see how many hours of phone time. I want to get 4 hours of phone time every day.
Wow.
And I document this. The next thing I do, I document what was my greatest achievement for the day. The next thing I do, I document my greatest lesson for the day. What was something I screwed up? I didn't get back to someone soon enough, or whatever it is. And so that's my obsession. It's all performance. And then I have 3 metrics that I have every month and every week. How many new candidates, new horses, I call them horses because it's like a game, right? How many new partner level attorneys do I have each week that are interested in talking with me? How many submissions, and then how many first face-to-face interviews do I set up? So for me, it's all about the metrics.
Wow.
And so the one thing about, and the most important, I mean, they're all important metrics, but the one that's the most valuable is the greatest lesson learned. I document my mistakes, and then I go back. So I just started doing this on an Excel spreadsheet the first part of this year as I re-entered my search practice, which I'd done several years ago, but re-entered it full Monty, no hesitation. And so what that does, it gives me data where I can see where I need to grow. What are those things that I'm screwing up on? Man, I need to tighten up on that issue. So it gives me data on where I can improve. And so for me, that's what I obsess about. I obsess about, and then I have certain rituals when I wake up in the morning. And wake up in the morning, first thing I do, I say today's going to be the most exciting day of my life. Sounds kind of corny. Yeah, today's going to be the most exciting day of my life. But I say that and it works for me. And so as I'm making my bed, if my wife's still in it, I don't make my bed. But if she's up, then I make the bed and I do my rituals. I'm serious. Next thing I say is everything I touch turns to gold. Next thing I say is everybody I talk to wants to do business with me. That's the mantra, right? And the next thing I say, it's almost like a prayer or an ask. Put me in the path of those whom I can serve.
Yes.
So my intention, it's not about making commissions, it's about service. It takes my eyes off myself. Because in my business, the only way I do well is creating a mutual satisfaction of needs between law firms and partners. It's not about me, it's about them. So it takes my ego out of it. It's all about them.
Fantastic.
So that's what I think about. That's what I obsess over, Dov.
That's very cool, mate. That's very cool. We are very, very close to the end here, and I want to ask you.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry, Dov.
I want to ask you, first of all, what is one myth that you wish all leaders would get over?
That it's about themselves. It's not about them.
Right.
It's about their team. It's about the employees. I asked a retired four-star Marine General, Walt Boomer. I said, what's more important, mission accomplishment or taking care of your people? And he said, that's a good question. Let me think about this. He said, it's taking care of your people. As long as you've got the right people in place, they'll accomplish the mission. That's what it's all about, Dov.
So obvious, and yet so few leaders get it, eh? It really is. So one of the things that I believe, this is my belief, it's not the truth, is that the place we learn leadership first is in the home. Our mothers and our fathers. Now, I want to be clear in saying sometimes grandparents or aunts or uncles, but I want to be clear here that there are many crappy leaders. So when I say you learn leadership first in the home, sometimes you learn some terrible leadership things at home. And your original background, who taught you a poor leadership lesson in your childhood that you had to create, that you had to fix in order to become the leader that you are today?
I'd say it was one of my high school instructors, my band instructor. When I quit band, I said I want to get involved in sports and other activities because I want to go to the Naval Academy. And he said, I think you're setting too high of a goal for yourself. Made it a lot easier to quit band, Dov.
Sure.
And that was a lesson for me where don't stifle someone's goals. Something I taught my son. He said, I don't want to go to the Naval Academy. Are you okay with that? I'm like, why are you asking me? Well, that's what you talk about. Well, that's what I did. You need to do what you want to do. Shoot high, do your very best, be grateful, and have fun. And here he is, international model a year later. He shot high. And so I'm really proud of him. So I think it's just that myth of don't stifle people's ambition. And it's not about you. Don't stifle people's ambition.
That's fantastic. Scott, it's been a real pleasure. Loved having you here. Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you, about your book, and potentially hiring you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, thanks, Dov. My website is scottlove.com. That's my speaker's site. My book is on there. The book is called Why They Follow, How to Lead with Positive Influence. There's a link to Amazon on my site. And if anybody has any questions, you can email me through the site.
Fabulous. Well, it's been great having you on the show. This has really been a great conversation. And again, I say this to all the time. Please don't just listen to the show in the background. Actually do something with it. I encourage you to reach out to Scott. Let him know what you got out of him being on the show. The guy is a busy guy, took time out of his day to be here with you and share his knowledge, share his wisdom, share his insights to help you be a better leader so that you can actually make sure that the right people are following. You're leading in a way that has the right people following. So I want to thank you, Scott, for being here. I want to thank you, dear listener, for tuning in and for your attention and for your engagement. And remember that the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive. It's exactly on point with what we've been talking about today. And that the fastest growing companies are often hit the point where they realize that they're spending an absolute fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, but they're also losing those talent at an alarmingly high rate of turnover. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent only to have them leave before there's a return on your investment, then come and talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization. With our assistance, you can reduce employee turnover rate by as much as 20 to 80% in as little as 120 days, thus evaporating those horrendous costs and wasted training and development. FullMontyLeadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Simple, because you can't outsource authenticity. Remember to get over to matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, matrix like the movie, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and you can get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tools valued at $197, but you're a regular viewer, so get over there and you get it absolutely free. Till next time, this is Dov Barron, Full Monty Leadership, saying, stay curious, my friend, stay curious whether you are actually paying attention to the people you lead, because if you're not, they're not going to stay loyal. Till next time, this is Dov Barron. I am out.